Hey Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Laura. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay today. A little overheated. I'm a little bit overdressed for what I usually wear the podcasts. I'm up in the attic where I don't necessarily have great air conditioning, and normally I
I
try to keep.
noticed you're wearing like a jersey or
I'm
something.
wearing some sort of
Your
jersey for some
your
reason,
Canada
which is
is showing
odd.
through.
My Canada Century, I've got the maple leaf. I've got the emblem of the Royal Canadian Air Force on here. But you're probably wondering why, on an August day, have I decided to put on my hockey jersey for today's podcast?
I
And
am wondering that.
you are wondering, as any respectful person would be, no one else
Yeah.
would come in here and say, "Wow, Laura is wearing a sports jersey, and she's not really a sporty person normally. What is going on here?" Yes, so even though I don't necessarily talk about sports a lot, I'm actually a huge hockey fan, which is almost obligatory if you live in Canada. So if Trump ever kicks you all out of the states and you need to come to Canada, one of the things you will have to learn very quickly is about ice hockey, which is not officially or actually our national sport here. Do you know what the national sport is in Canada?
No, I would have guessed hockey.
Anybody would have guessed hockey. It's actually lacrosse for some reason, which nobody actually plays, which seems to be like a sport that they only play in like American like Ivy League colleges.
Did you say
Um,
lacrosse?
it's lacrosse. It's actually lacrosse, which nobody actually plays here. But the real de facto national sport, of course, is ice hockey. And growing up in Canada, I had really no choice but to become an ice hockey fan. Even though I was a terrible skater, I never learned how. I was not terribly interested in actually doing sports as a child. But one of the ways you sort of to try to fit in and that you bond help to, form relationships, especially with your dad, is you sort of sit around and watch whatever sports games are on. And of course, we had a lot of hockey going in the house. So I became a fan of our home team, of which I'm actually not wearing their jersey because that was the old version of the team before they moved to Phoenix, I believe. But the new version that came back about 15 years ago. So this is the official jersey of the Winnipeg Jets. Who, even though, like I said, I don't really follow sports closely even today, I make an exception to follow my local boys, who I think are the most attractive team in the AHL. I can share some pictures with you later as far as why that might be. But I follow them not just because they are because they're pleasant to look at, but also because they play a great brand of hockey. They actually finished first in the season last year for like the first time in their history, but didn't make it all the way to the final. So the cup, they got eliminated in the second round, unfortunately. Tears all around, but obviously fan forever, fan for life. But the real reason I'm wearing this here today is because the focus of our show today is on, maybe you can get this one, Joe,
Sports.
sports. So of course, sports is has been always a top line issue when people are talking about sort of the place of trans in society. A lot of it has centered on trans people and their and where they fit in the sporting world. And in particular, over the last 5 years, this has become a focal point of the divisive politics that often takes place around sports, especially sort of very focused on the inclusion of trans women like ourselves, in women's sports, and whether this is fair to the other female participants. And as we've all recognized in the last 5 years, the public opinion has shifted on this quite a lot from uh, 5 years ago, where I remember seeing ads that were actually promoting trans women who were participating in sports. So there was an ad, I think it was for Nike or for
Yeah, it
Adidas,
was it was Nike, I
featured,
think. Yeah.
yeah, it was Nike, and it featured a Brazilian volleyball player who was excelling in women's volleyball, and they sort of were portraying her like with pride, like look at this achievement, this woman who's overcome so much adversity, so that she could and overcome so many life struggles to finally find her true self, and then found a position on, I think, a Brazilian beach volleyball team. And 5 years from now, there is absolutely no chance that ad would run anywhere in the world because public opinion has turned so rapidly against the participation. And I don't need to go into all the details now. We'll talk about that as the show goes on. But we're at the point now where 80%, if not more, of the American public would basically agree with the statement that trans women should not participate in sports with with what is often called biological women. It's not a term I use, but at least with natal women in their sports, because they have an unfair advantage and or pose safety issues. So
Sure.
in any case, I know that there are a lot of people in the trans community who don't necessarily buy into this message and are still trying to make the argument about how trans people or why trans people should still have a place, not just in sports in general, but with the people they see as their peers, being other women playing sports on teams or in competition together. And so, with that, I wanted to introduce our guest for today, who is someone who sort of reached out to me quite a few months ago when I was sort of posting about sort of my opinions on trans women in sports, which aren't necessarily in favor of broad inclusion, and who kind of challenged me and did it, in a way I thought that was very respectful. Didn't, a lot of people have come up and sort of jumped down my throat, who feel I'm selling out the trans community when I talk like this, but, we engaged in a respectful conversation about her opinions and my opinions, and I learned a lot about her experience, and she was sort of an open listener on mine, and I thought she would be a great guest because I think she's someone who can present a real heartfelt approach about why this works, and not necessarily, try to berate or badger our audience about it, but really engages in conversation. And so I wanted to bring on our guest, whose name is Karleigh Webb. And Karleigh has a web presence as well. She is a sports journalist and a producer, and she's been in that game for about 30 years. She's a writer and contributor to LGBTQ sports site called outsports.com, and she's a sports producer of her own podcast called Transpositions, which is a weekly trans-centered news magazine on YouTube, where she often covers issues related to trans inclusions in sports. The other thing she does, she's a training coordinator for the Trans Lifeline, and she's a very competitive athlete, so she's still, even in 2025, an active participant. She runs, she cycles, she plays triathlon, and she does. The main thing that I recognize her for is her participation in a women's tackle football league. So she plays in Connecticut, where she's a member of the Connecticut Ambush of the Women's Football Alliance, and was selected as a League All-American All-Star in 2024. And so she is here to make the case about why she should continue to be on playing with her friends and her colleagues on this team, and potentially also about the larger place for women in sports in in competitive sports and in recreational sports. So with that, I wanted to bring on our guest, Karleigh Webb.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
First off, Laura, I'm loving that jersey.
You love this jersey?
Go Winnipeg Jets.
These are my boys. These are my boys from Winnipeg. Winnipeg Jets are the winner of the 2025 President's Trophy and the should-have-been winners of the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, lost in the second round. Maybe I'll just start with some sports trivia because I know you're a big fan. Number 44?
Who is number 44? It's been a minute. Wow, you're digging
deep. The back of my chair.
Can't see.
So I got Josh Morrissey.
That's your Josh Morrissey jersey. That's digging deep.
He's a cutie patootie.
That's digging deep.
He's a diminutive defenseman and has amazing footwork, which I'm sure translates into a lot of other skills. He's my boo. He's my favorite boy, and proud to be wearing his jersey. And I see you too are wearing a jersey
tonight. I'm wearing my jersey. I'm wearing the jersey of my tackle football team down here in Connecticut, the Connecticut Ambush.
Okay.
Who won the Northeast region this season, got to the playoffs, got to the National Conference Championship game, lost a tough one to the Richmond Black Widows in the conference title game, but
that's a name.
We're gearing up for 2026, and we're looking forward to making our way to Canton for the WFA Championship and looking to get promotion to Division II for 2027. That's the goal.
Next year, you go make those widows cry.
Are the widows out of Virginia?
Yes, Richmond.
Yeah, that's where I live. Team. That's where I live. Richmond,
well, the thing
Virginia.
is, we won't get a shot at the Black Widows until we get a chance at them in 27 because they won the championship in Division III. They were promoted up to Division II. So, I mean, one thing about women's tackle football is the league we're in works on a promotion relegation scheme.
Oh, like English football.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know a thing or two. So.
Well, I know nothing about sports, so assume I know nothing.
You know nothing about sports?
CrossFit. CrossFit's the only sport I know.
Yeah, it's very rare that I'm the only person in any room who knows more about sports than someone else, unless we're specifically talking about my hockey team. but I'm I'm a bit of a blank slate for the rest of it. Like I know what the sports are, I can recognize them if I see them on the screen, but don't really know a lot about like who the people are right now.
No, I'm like in the IT crowd when the guys are trying to
Oh,
pretend like they know how to have the conversation. So like I used to go around work being like, "Did you catch that ludicrous display last night?" That's all I can say. That's my sports ball talk.
all right. That's okay. Let's talk some sports ball. So, Karleigh, tell us a little bit about you. Why are we having you here today?
Well, first off, my name's Karleigh Webb. Pronouns are she, her. Scoring at home. I have been a working sports journalist as a writer and a television producer and presenter for 30 years. I am currently a writer contributor to Outsports.com, which is the world's premier source for LGBTQ sports. The site has been around for 25 years now, and we're looking to go another 25 to tell some stories from the queer point of view, because our locker rooms are becoming more queer. Our sports are becoming more inclusive. We're expanding them out. And that's one reason why I want it to stay that way. I want us to keep building, not to contract, but to build. Because when sports are more open, when sports are more inclusive, they often lead the way for our entire society to be the same.
Yes. So I'm glad you said that because you sort of you're someone who is you're on the field, you're in the trenches, so to speak. You are playing on a team, and it's worth mentioning that you're playing in a team that is a women's league,
That's
um,
right.
and you talk about sports being have always been about sports and women's sports have always been a very welcome space, especially for sexual minorities, as a place that women could feel whether they were sort of classically straight presenting or more queer, that this was always a place that women, no matter your presentation, could find a home in. And we know, and like I said, competitive sports have been a haven for people from the lesbian community and people from the gender nonconforming community for years and years. And you talk about them being more inclusive. Yet at the same time, the conversation around sports doesn't seem to be reflecting the experience or what the experience you're describing on sports. And especially, what we wanted to talk to with you about today is sort of growing this growing sense of that women's sports are not a place where trans women should be or should belong. So, what I really wanted to understand is like, why do you see? Well, is this really a contrast? Like, when you're having conversations about this with your teammates, or are you even having conversations about with your teammates, or what are people actually saying? What are the women actually saying who are putting on the pads and the jersey and the helmets with you every week?
What those women are actually saying is, Karleigh, we're glad you're here, and no, I don't want to go against you in a tackling drill. That is what they're saying for the most part. They're like, hey, we're glad you're a part of the team because you play hard, you're positive, you're a good teammate, you want to get out there, you want to work hard, you want to help us win and just be a part of the unit. And that's what coming back to football for me was. I first got the opportunity to return to football on a team called Reapers Women's Football. It's one of 3 teams that were in my state that were combined to form the Ambush in 2024. But when I first got there, or rather when I first met this team, it was at a Pride celebration in West Hartford, Connecticut, back summer 22. And I go there, and it's Pride. So you're wearing, Pride is where you just wear anything. And me, I'm in a football jersey and a skirt done in trans Pride colors. It's pretty obvious. But I was also carrying the football because that day I wanted to be like, hey, come out, see me at Pride, play catch with me. And I had a friend who was a trans woman, who's an EMT, who played for Connecticut's first women's tackle football team called the Connecticut Crush. This was a legendary team, been around since the 1990s. They folded in 2010. But they had a lot of progeny, a lot of players from that team spawned other teams. And she was telling me, hey, there's this women's football team, maybe they need a PR person or a videographer. So I go over to their tent, and there are these intimidating women. I'm talking muscle t-shirts, sunglasses, they looked like if there was a game called right then and there, they would have gone out to their cars, got their pads, and said, "Let's go." And I'm there, and I'm saying, "Hey, you know what? I don't know. Hey, I'd love to be a fan, love to be a cheerleader. It's good to have women's football back." But the starting quarterback for the team, who's our starting quarterback for the ambush now, Sam Valentino, comes up to me, sees me holding football, and says, "Do you know what you're doing with that thing?" I was like, "What? The football? Do you know what you're doing with that?" Next thing you know, I'm playing catch with these girls, and they're telling me that, wait a minute, they realize that, oh no, she can play a little bit. So then the team's administrator, Sonia Flusky, comes up to me and said, forget about being a videographer, have you thought about playing? I was like, can I play? Because it's pretty obvious where I'm coming from on this deal.
Yeah. So
But she said the league has rules about this. If you meet the requirements, you can play. We're a women's football team for all women. And that planted the seed and struck a chord with me, because by that time I've been on hormones for over 4 years. I'm more than met any international standard that you could bring to me. And not only that, I have the Strava data to prove the difference before and after.
Yeah.
So anyway, sent the paperwork in. That fall, started working out with the team during the fall camp. Then January got serious. We got the pads on because women's football is a spring season. And April 2023, I'm out there playing my first game, and I had a 60-yard interception return for a touchdown, which I, by the way, chronicled as part of the youth anthology on queer athletes. Athlete is a gender, which came out in May. And I encourage people to buy it because it is a wonderful, wonderful set of stories. And it's built for kids. It's age appropriate for middle school kids, but it's also good for adults. And that's one thing I'd love to see parents and coaches reading this, to let kids know, stray kids, LGBTQ kids, whatever, that you know what, sports should be an open place for everyone.
Yeah.
So it should be open for everybody.
Because, you bring up, this issue of meeting the criteria.
That's right.
I've been on hormones for 4 years, and at that time there was sort of these rules that I'm sure vary maybe a little bit from sport to sport, but basically said that if you are on hormones for some period of time, whether it's a year or 2 years, and your testosterone levels are suppressed to a certain level, then you qualify to be on the team, and you meet the at least the athletic the definition for athletic competition of a woman. And what I remember also from my sporting days, because I played recreational, not football, but I played recreational soccer, is that the teams that we were playing, like we had, I wasn't out as trans then, but we had some players who were out as trans on our team, and and there was often a competition for them because, rightly or wrongly, there was often an assumption, these women are taller, they're fat, they might be faster, they might be taller, like. And if opposed to no, I don't want this trans woman on my team because she's trans, it was more like, we want to recruit the trans women because they're good, or at least that was sort of the thinking behind it. Not obviously not every trans woman was necessarily good, but it was a very different attitude of kind of, and it wasn't like, oh, it's unfair that you have a trans woman on your team. It was like, well, we should find our own trans woman, and if that's what we want to do. So it's just very interesting that they saw you and saw your skills and was like, we just want to make sure you're eligible so we can play because.
But here's the wild thing: the trans part really didn't come up that much.
Good.
I mean, here's the thing: they knew I was trans. They knew the T.
Yeah.
But at one level, we care because you're our sister. You're a part of our team. You're our teammate. But at another level, you're trans. So you're just one of the unit. And really, that's what any trans athlete wants. I played against other trans women like myself in the league I play in. There's 57 teams in the WFA. There's maybe 20 of us, maybe. And basically, for the most part, our teammates, they understand the issue. They understand the issues. That's another thing. You'd be surprised the number of people in competitive sport who have trans people in their lives.
Yeah.
They understand that, no, this isn't new to them. I didn't have to walk in a team and give trans 101 because I mean, my starting quarterback's a school teacher and has trans kids in her school. Our starting fullback is a clinical psychologist who deals with LGBTQ families. This isn't new. We have counselors and nurses and just people in general who have trans people who are part of their lives. They have queer people who are part of their lives. This isn't new to them. And I think that is one of the keys that you're finding in sports. And I think what we really need to do is actually talk to athletes and talk amongst athletes, especially when we're talking about all these issues that are coming across. The common denominator, so much of the static is that athletes aren't talking among themselves. They're not talking to each other, and governing bodies are not talking directly to the athletes who are living the life and who are living with trans people on their teams. And for the most part, have been I've had maybe one negative experience in 3 years playing football.
Yeah.
And really, and if you take all the sports I do, I've maybe had 2 or 3 negative experiences total since I came out 8 years ago.
Yeah. So, like a lot of the stories that come out, especially the ones that are played up in the media, are often coming from female teammates or female competitors. And we saw this more recently. Like probably the highest profile case is with Leah Thomas in swimming, but even this week, there's a young woman in California named
A.B. Hernandez,
who's playing, I think, volleyball right now on her team. I can't remember the name of her team, but
Jerupa Valley High School, and she's an excellent track athlete. That's the thing. In volleyball, she's okay.
She's probably
but let me put it this way. Memo to any Canadian university who's a part of youth sports. You want to get this kid. Yes, you do. You really want to get this kid. Western Ontario, University of BC, Simon Fraser, you want this kid.
Okay.
You really do, because she's an excellent jump problem.
Yeah. So she's, but what's happening is you see stories like on Fox News where both the teammates, the people that she was supposed to be playing against, the girls, or they're finding at least some girls to come on and say, this isn't fair, this isn't right, why are we having to compete against a biologic male? And then also you see sometimes her teammates coming on because their games are getting canceled or forfeited because some other teams aren't playing against them, and they're like, well, I'm losing my season now because we're taking this political statement. Your experience seems very different about teammates who want you there. So why aren't we hearing those stories, like you say, of your teammates or the teammates of any number of trans people, whether it be in recreational sports or semi-professional sports like you're doing, whether it's in high school sports, whether it's in competitive or semi-competitive high-level sports, of people sort of saying, yeah, I get the issues here, but this is my teammate, this is my friend, I don't want to lose, I don't like how this person is being treated. Take the science out of it. Why aren't people humanizing it?
Because I'm going to take off the athlete hat and put on the journalist hat. I'm going to sound like a professor at my old school, Medill School of Journalism, Northwestern University, and I'm going to say this, because so much of the press has gotten so lazy. Instead of actually digging for the stories and getting at the root of a story, instead of actually doing the type of journalism that we say we like, which is both sides of an issue, they're giving one side and trying to say it's both and trying to extrapolate it. Or they're trying to say, well, here's the trans view of it without talking to trans people, but you're lining up like Peyton McNabb and Riley Gaines and saying it's a both side story when it's not. And really, let's talk about both sides for a second. Because to me, the one thing I hear often is that there's two extreme viewpoints. No, there's not. Here's the way it really is. You're for exclusion or you're for inclusion. To me, that's the dividing line. Now, there are many of us who are for inclusion, but we don't agree on all the nuts and bolts on how to get there. And that's okay. We're on the same, but the things I tell the people who say that, quote unquote, that my viewpoint seemed extremist and actually it's not. And the people who say we're just in the middle trying to figure it out, a lot of those people in the middle, we're on the same team. We just disagree on how exactly we get there. and what are the things we should be doing. But we basically believe in the idea that sports should be open for everyone. I mean, sports should be open for cisgender girls. Sports should be open for girls who may have differences in sexual development. Sports should be open for transgender girls and women, again, with due regulation. And really, another thing, Joe and Laura, is that one of the biggest problems I see with this issue is we don't ask the question before the question. And especially in the case of high school kids, we need to ask the question before the question. And the question before the question is, who's going to be sitting at the table when the rules are made? Because that's the biggest issue, is that these rules are being made, but who's sitting at the table when they're made? And what I want to see, for example, I want to see NCAA type regulations at the varsity level in high schools. But before we even talk about that, we need to look at who's making the rules. And part of that is we need stakeholders in inclusion actually sitting down and having the hard discussions and maybe getting on each other's nerves, and maybe we got to snatch each other's edges a little. But I want coaches, administrators, parents, student athletes who are cis and trans coming together. I want peers, and I also want mental health people in mental health who work with trans people. I want endocrinologists and doctors who work with trans people. I want administrators and coaches and governing bodies to have all the information, coming from the idea that we want to include kids, but we also want to make sure that all the bases are covered, so that the competition is above board, and for those who are worried about safety, it's as safe as we can possibly make it within those rules. I think if we start there and cut out the ADFs and the Riley Gaineses of the world because they have no stake in inclusion, they have no stake in sports, I think we can get somewhere, and we can get somewhere that can work across the board. I'm a believer in win-win solutions, and I believe we may have to work and push and pull, but we can have win-win solutions.
Yeah, so there's this, we talk about inclusion. I think if you just ask the question from a purely, do you like inclusion? Very few people are necessarily against the concept of inclusion. And even people who are, let's say, antagonists or opponents of specifically trans inclusion in sports, they argue with this line that I think it's a throwaway line, but it's rhetorically effective. Of course, trans girls can play sports. They just can't play. They just can't play with the girls. They can play on the boys' team, or they can play on some magical trans team that will be generated out of the one trans player in the league. But they still make this argument that that women's sports are for women, and the reason we have women's sports is so that competition is fair. Yeah. Recognizing that on average, and obviously there are a lot of really tough girls, you could wipe the floor with a lot of boys, but on average, that a moderate, that once you get past a certain age or further along in puberty, that there are sort of height and strength advantages on average that are going to make on an average group of boys of a certain age, more athletically competitive than an average group of girls. And if you let someone on the team, whether they're good or not, you're still displacing someone who doesn't have that advantage of whatever male puberty brings to the table, of height, wingspan, bigger hands, but even if you're on hormones, the bigger rib cage, the higher oxygen capacity, all those kind of things. So how do you, where we have this real conversation around fairness, and is it fair for that trans girl to displace another girl off the team, assuming that the team is of a fixed size, or of winning a scholarship, or winning an award or an MVP trophy, or whatever it might be that another person who didn't have that advantage would have gotten. So what the problem is I know you can argue about it, but their rhetoric is just cleaner and more direct. Like, the reason I think it's been more compelling is that the story makes sense at a very basic level that hits people viscerally, that they're like, yeah, that's not fair. Whereas our story seems to be more, it winds and it weaves.
Complicated.
You tell it, it's complicated.
Well, it's nuance.
it's nuanced, but
there is nuance here. But here's the way I answer people who say, well, first off, there's the advantages. Well, first, even before we go to advantages, let's talk about that word fairness for a second. When we talk about fairness, whose fairness are we centering in this moment? Whose fairness are we centering here?
well,
Because when a lot of
born female
when a
or
lot
male,
of
right?
no when a lot of cisgender people say fairness, what they're really saying is comfort. And we need to be willing to say that, and more so, we need to be willing to discuss it.
yeah,
We have to be willing to discuss that.
yeah.
Sure.
We're not comfortable. No, we're not comfortable with A.B. Hernandez winning a long jump at a high school track meet, even though A.B. Hernandez has done everything that all the cis people claim that we want these trans kids to do. I mean, she's never seen a male puberty. She hasn't. The fact of the matter is, she's just a tall girl. She's a naturally tall girl with some long levers, and also she's well coached. And you can tell that by her form. She's well coached. She knows how to hit that board, hit those marks, and extend through that pit. I was a long jumper in high school, so I know it. And I could tell you, this kid's good. I mean, she would be a very solid college long jumper and triple jumper. She'd be very solid. And the sport's missing out on someone good because of someone's discomfort. And that's what we're really talking about. Same thing with Leah Thomas, same thing with Cece Telfer. They jump through all the hoops that you say that you're supposed to jump through. You can't fault kids for being competitive. You can't fault athletes for being competitive. And I do not feel it is fair for a trans person who's done things by the book in every way, shape, or form to be denied their opportunity because someone feels uncomfortable. That's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah.
We can talk about the rules. We can talk about all the scientific data, and that scientific data, in many ways, there's a lot we don't know, but what we do know points to inclusion. In fact, another study came out with Joanna Harper, which again shows a nuanced picture, but overall it shows when HRT makes a huge difference. But before you get in, I just want to make this point as well. When we talk about an advantage now, here's the question I ask people. First off, is there not an advantage? There could be, but that depends on each athlete. No two athletes come off the assembly line the same way. But the dividing line for me is in two areas. One, is that advantage perceived or not the sole arbiter in what happens in a particular ball game, in a race, in a stage of a cycling event? And the answer is, for the most part, no, it's not. You can't say that that's the sole arbiter, because there's so many things that go into what you see on that field.
But the one thing you can control is one thing that did come off the assembly line the same, was how they were born. And so if you're saying we can't control all these other factors, well, the one thing you can control is whether or not someone was born male or female, right? And that can be the deciding factor. And if someone...
Can? Really?
So...
I mean...
Well, that's the deciding factor when it comes to sports inclusion, right?
Is
right?
it?
Like,
is it?
Well, I'm saying as the argument for excluding, right? That would be the argument. The argument would be,
Yeah.
this person was clearly...
There's a lot of overlap between men and women in sports.
Well, my thing is that to me, that overlap is more about the fact that we can't celebrate women in sports on their own merit as a society. And that's not a trans people's problem. That's a cis. No, it's not, because it's an offshoot that's fueling this issue. Because
there are a lot of cis women that don't.
That people disrespect women's sports. Yeah.
There are a lot. No, and my thing is, I've respected women's sports long before it wasn't cool. Yeah. When I was a 9-year-old tyke back in Omaha, Nebraska, we won a league championship of the first women's basketball league in this country, and then the day after we won the championship, the league folded. Yeah. But the point is, the thing I'm getting at is, when people talk about this men and women sports, and women can't beat men. What you're really saying with all of this is two things. Transgender women are not women, and cisgender women stink at sports. We know both of them are not true, but that's what they're trying to sell you.
I disagree with
and
you.
I'm not for that.
There's two different. I think there's two different things. Because obviously, at the highest levels of sports.
Hold on, Laura. Sorry.
Okay, go.
No, I was just gonna say, trans women aren't the same as women. That's why they're called
No, I didn't
trans
say they're
women.
the same. I didn't say they're the same as cis women. What I'm saying is what the transphobes are trying to sell is transgender women are not women and cisgender women stink at sport.
Yeah, but hold
I'm
on
not
a
saying
second.
the two are the same. No two people are the same, Joe.
But hold on,
No
you're
two
saying that that's what they're saying, as if that's wrong. But that is correct. Transgender
No, it's
women are
not.
not women.
Yes, we are. Why would
we're not?
well,
'Cause
then
then
if
hold
that
on a
is-
second. Hold on a second.
Yes, we
hold on.
are. We're a
Hold on a
different
second.
kind.
Hold on a second.
We're-
If that is
we're a
the
different-
case, then why are we called trans women, and why are we born as men?
Because trans is a descriptor, just like black women, white women. Yeah, I know certain white women don't like being called white women. I understand that, but tall women, short women, athletic women, offensive lineman women, linebacker women. To me, it's a descriptor. It's a descriptor.
But only trans
And if you're-
women.
now-
But
and
only
if you're
trans
like-
women are born a certain way, to where we have to have certain medical things done in order to come to sort of parity with all other women. That's not quite the same as saying someone is black and a white woman. That's not quite the same as saying a trans woman is like a woman, in the sense that, well, no, because we had to do very specific things to even get our hormone levels close to the same, and to bring us to that
in
parity
short,
for
you're willing,
fairness.
so in short, because of that, you're willing to allow yourself to be treated less than.
It's not
Also-
less,
no,
right?
I mean,
It's-
to me, that's the way it cuts. If that's the case,
But what about all the
then
other
what are we-
women in the team that aren't born as men? Doesn't it treat them differently by saying you have to play with these trans women?
Well, here's the
The
thing.
assumption
If
goes
that
with
is the
that being
case,
born- yeah.
if that is the case, what are the differences you want to point out? And within those differences, what kind of boundaries do you want to set? Then who is?
Yeah. So the
Then who
argument
is,
that-
Joe? Because the fact of the matter is, we can take this to an ugly nth degree that honestly I think does a disservice to all of us.
Yeah.
Trans women, cis women,
Well, if you're
women
born
who
as a
are,
woman,
women who
then
are
that is-
affluent,
that is
women who
the
are
common-
not. Because
But
I can
you're
tell
not
you
born
this
with
much.
money or not with money. You're born
You can, I mean,
as a
because I
woman or
can
not.
tell you
Sorry.
this: if I
Yeah.
was born a cisgender woman, there'd be certain people in our society who would still take away my womanhood because of my melanin content.
Well, that's entirely, that could be entirely
To
true.
me, it's
but
all.
that's
To
not,
me, it's all. That
but it's-
could be true. Come on, Joe.
what I'm saying
Come
is,
on,
though,
Joe. Come
there
on.
there might always be someone who wants to minimize you. But what I'm getting at here is
The
there
point
is
is that I'm not.
key difference.
If other people want to minimize me, that's their deal. I am not going to minimize myself, and I'm not going to allow people to minimize my 37 cisgender teammates in the same way. I'm not going to allow them to do that. And that's what a lot of these that's what the Riley Gaines and the ADFs of the world are looking to do with this argument. And I'm not going to stand for that. Not at all. Because the thing is, though, they're not busting on me. I'm 54 years old and I'm still balling. I'm
You're
blessed to still
54?
be balling out. Yes, I am.
Oh my God!
I'm 54 years
God,
old and
I
blessed
got
to
some
be
work to
balling
do.
out.
Us.
But
Must be
the thing is,
careful.
it's not so much what they're saying about me. It's what they're saying about my teammates, saying that they're less than, and I can't abide by that,
Yeah. So
and I refuse to
there's-
abide by that.
Yeah.
So again,
the-
I refuse to the idea that transgender women are not women and cisgender women are lousy at sport, because we both know it's false. But
Like I-
that's what they're selling people, and unfortunately, people are buying it,
Yeah.
and that's what bothers me.
So a couple points
People
I
are
want
buying it.
A couple points I want to grant you, which is first of all that women's sports are broadly disrespected, and deserve-
And that's wrong.
Yeah, and it's absolutely wrong. And women who have devoted.
But I don't think that's related to the
elite levels-
transgender issue.
No.
Oh,
but
heck
I think-
yeah, it is.
But
Oh,
at the
yeah.
at the elite levels, women who are competing, let's say in the WNBA, top line tennis, whatever it is, these are women who have devoted their lives, their evenings, their childhoods to the development of a skill set that has put them at an elite level. They've sacrificed a lot of things to perform to the best of their abilities so that they can reach the top to an elite level in their sport. At the same time, we also recognize that at the elite levels, if you're talking about whether you're talking about the top 10 women's tennis players, the top 10 WNBA players, the top 10 women golfers, whatever those top 10 women would be, is that there are probably 500 to 5,000 men who, if they were competing head to head, would.
But that's the thing. They
days.
don't. So they don't. So why are we doing this?
But I'm just saying,
I can celebrate. I can celebrate
and they
a
should be
Pete
celebrated. I'm not saying they shouldn't
Sampras.
be
I can
celebrated.
celebrate a Pete Sampras, and I can celebrate a Serena
absolutely.
Williams. And my thing is, that's that to me, that's the larger issue. Why can't we as a society?
Yeah. And
The
we see it all
reason
the
why
time.
the reason why we disrespect women's sports is because we disrespect women. When
Absolutely.
we stop doing
there.
that,
Yeah.
then
So
we got something. And that's
that
the
part I
real
agree with you.
issue.
And
And to me, that's the bigger issue, and that's blowing back on me. That disrespect is blowing. They're using me to sell that disrespect, and again, I
that's the
can't
point I wanna
abide by
grant you.
that.
Yeah, so that's the point I want to grant you, which is that, is that because there is this at the top levels, there is this difference, is that people take that and say women are no good at sports, when really women are good at sports at the sports too, and the metric isn't can Serena Williams beat Carlos Alcaraz? It's is Serena Williams the best player that she could be, or whoever the best women's player, if it's Sabalenka or whoever it is right now. The and where this often ties together is that the kind of people who disrespect women's sports, the kind of people who are throwing dildos on the court at WNBA
Nasty.
games, are the same kind of people who I can guarantee you are 100% against trans women in sports. And probably the majority of the people who are the most strident about the exclusion of trans women from women's sports would be the last people in the world to be caught dead watching a WNBA game.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that all is true. That all is true.
I have a daughter, and I wouldn't want her playing against trans women without any kind of controls, because generally they're going to have
but you
an
see,
advantage.
that's the thing. But see, that's the thing. The controls are in place, Joe.
Would you want your daughter to play against what sport does your daughter play? Let me just see if I can pick a name here.
Well, she doesn't play
Doesn't
any
matter.
sports now. She's graduated,
Okay.
but yeah,
So
she
not important.
graduated.
Okay.
But I'm just
Well,
saying,
let's say-
hypothetically, she's playing soccer. I don't know.
So let's say she's playing. Let's say she's playing soccer, and she is joining a team with Karleigh Lloyd, like the equivalent of Karleigh Lloyd. Karleigh Lloyd's like a big woman. She is strong. She is fast. She's all muscle. If she ran
Or
into
Christine
the-
Sinclair.
or Christine
Or
Sinclair.
even if they were
Dogs
trying
on
out for the
teams.
same team, I wouldn't
they're
want her to be
yeah.
missing out on a scholarship out of high school
no,
because a
but-
trans woman took her place.
But you took it first as a
I don't
safety.
buy it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're never going to sell me on that one, Joe. Not in a
No, I'm
million
saying
years.
this is the concern.
You're not
of
going
a-
to sell me on that.
of a
Yeah.
I
parent,
understand the
right?
concern, but let's take a look at
So
the history.
how do you
Let's take a
how
look
do
at the
you
actual
address?
numbers.
But how do you address that concern? It's not
Oh,
about telling them they're wrong.
Joe, I've
right?
addressed
It's-
it. I'll address it. And I know it's not necessarily, well, first, sometimes, you see, we got a saying among my people is that sometimes you got to tell somebody they're wrong so that they get right. And here's what I'm talking about. For the first thing, because I've had this conversation with parents, with a lot of parents, because I'm a believer in we got to have conversations and we got to be willing to talk. That's one reason why I want to be a competitive athlete, want to remain a competitive athlete and be open about it, because I want to have these conversations, because a lot of people are dealing from positions of fear. And first, let's talk about parents. Parents, number one, are going to be parents. I can't fault a parent for wanting to protect their kid.
Right.
Be it if their kids are cis or trans, you can't fault a parent for wanting to protect their kid. And if parents believe their kids are getting screwed over, they're going to fight like hell. I get that. But the first thing I'd sit that parent down is and let them look at the numbers. Because the fact of the matter is, The numbers don't lie, the timing sheets don't lie, scoreboards don't lie. And scoreboards do not jibe with the type of hysteria that certain people are trying to sell you to sell a certain social political agenda. As far as scholarship goes, how many transgender women in NCAA, NAIA, any college sport have earned a scholarship to play? At least in the United States, there's been none. None. Zero.
But that's because
There's been
zero. Inclusion has not been happening across the board. But there will be. There will be eventually.
But here's the thing: if there is, then hey, best athletes are going to cream's going to rise to the top.
But that person was born as a man. That person was born as a man with certain advantages that woman was not born with.
Again, can you definitively say that those advantages are the sole arbiter, especially when you've had regulations? And when you start talking about collegiate athletics, you start talking about the regulations kick in. And really, if you're serious about your sport, the regulations have kicked in long before you got to college. Yeah. See, that's the one case with A.B. Hernandez.
Well, hold on, let me hit you with another hypothetical.
Let's talk about real things.
Well, no. Hold on. I just feel like these are the concerns that I often hear, and I just want I want to put them on the stage. I'm not necessarily saying these are my views. I'm just trying to throw the tests. I have, say, 25 years, for an example, of testosterone, never on hormone therapy, anything. I start taking hormone therapy and I enter into competition. How is that any different than a woman taking testosterone most of her life and then jumping into a competition saying, well, I'm not doping, so it's okay? Like, it's unfair, right? And until we have data, which we don't, right? Where are we going to find that line?
Endogenous and exogenous. So, there's a huge difference between those two extremes.
Well, I'm saying we wouldn't want a cis woman doping for 25 years and then joining a competition.
Doping is very much a different conversation entirely. It's a different conversation.
I see. So the problem is, I find that argument compelling, and I find
I don't disagree with you on that. But the only way that you're going to be able to counter that argument is, number one, be willing to sit down and have the conversations. It's easy to sell hysteria. It's hard to sell facts. That is just life.
Of course.
So that I can agree with you on.
It's easy to sell hysteria. I can sell you hysteria in 5 seconds. Yeah. But you know what they say: a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth can tie its shoes. That's just life.
And that's what we come back to, which is that even if the facts were completely on your side, and to be honest, I don't think they are. But even if we were to assume that they are, we still lose the storytelling competition because it looks unfair, and the perception people. So when someone says, like as Joe said earlier, I don't like the idea of my 18-year-old daughter competing against someone who's been exposed to high levels of testosterone for the last 6 years, even if they are on blockers or hormones now, because if you sell that story to the average person, you don't have to explain it. It just sounds unfair. The story that you're trying to tell in terms of, well, it's not really because endogenous versus exogenous and this versus that, is a dirty story. It's not, it requires.
It is. Yeah. No doubt, but it needs to be told.
Yeah,
but we got to tell it.
But it requires getting people down
and that's the thing. We need to be willing to do it. I'm willing to do it because I understand that it moves sports that much farther. Yeah. It's not just about me. It's about sports. It's about something bigger than just me and my right to play. It's about making sports better. It's about sports being used to sell nastiness far beyond sports.
Yeah. No.
And unfortunately, that's the biggest thing that has me speaking out, is that I don't want to see sports used to sell broad-based discrimination.
Yeah, I agree with
Especially when sports throughout its history has been one of the greatest antidotes to discrimination. Sports has led the way in so much positive social change. Yeah, I don't want to see us going back. So that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. And I'd agree with you that like the biggest losers of the trans sports debate are cis women. And it's because while Trump is making, or and the sort of the right wing infrastructure is making this big ploy about taking whatever the handful of trans women out of sports and sort of galvanizing the population against this tiny minority of people, even if they like, even if we concede, even if we were to concede that there is some advantage, some athletic advantage that they have, the number of trans women in competition is so small that this is really a rounding error in terms of its effect on overall competitiveness. Like the likelihood of any one woman losing her spot to a trans woman joining her team is infinitesimal. At the same
Well, my
time,
thing is, it's not even a matter of that.
yeah,
To
but
me,
that's what
it's not
people
even a
believe.
matter of that. It's
That's
just a
what people
matter
believe.
of, hey, you
Yeah,
set regulations down, you set regulations down, and then you got to see what happens. There's only
yeah,
one way you're going to know, and you got to let people compete.
yeah,
But once you set those regulations down, and this is the other crux of the problem that no one really talks about. Once you set those regulations down, you can't immediately have a knee-jerk NASCAR reaction because someone wins.
yeah, yeah,
But that doesn't mean you don't review them because sporting governing bodies are reviewing rules every year.
yeah.
The rules
Oh,
are the NHL constantly reviews its
yeah,
rules every year. NFL does it, NCAA does it. They all do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But here's my problem with what we're seeing on this issue. Far too often, there's this unwritten rule saying, "Oh, if you're a transgender woman, you can play, but once you
you can't
win,
win.
we either kick you out or we change a rule so that you can't." When the fact of the matter is, you what are you going to do? Keep changing rules until we can't play anymore, or every time someone wins, that goes back again to the comfort issue. We
Yeah,
got to get a handle on that. We got to actually talk about it because it's out there. And it's not just in sports. There are people that are there are people uncomfortable with the fact that Joe Ellis gets on that helicopter and defends her country.
Sure.
yeah,
And
yeah,
to me, that's just as bad as someone being uncomfortable about me hitting that football field when I can prove beyond a shadow of a whisker of a doubt where all my biochemistry lies.
yeah. See, like I know where my biochemistry lies too, but I'm just going to talk a little bit like my experience, playing sports. So I was a high school athlete, not a super one, but a decent-ish one. I like to call myself the least deserving member of the Manitoba Basketball Hall of Fame because I am in the Hall of Fame, but mostly because I was a bench player on a really strong team that won a provincial championship and finished runner-up one year. But one thing I could do is I could shoot, and I can still shoot. I'm 5'8" and a bit. Now, when played high school basketball as a 5'8" person who weighed 130 pounds, who could shoot an open three with fair amount of consistency, but if you came running at me and waved your arms in my face, and I'd, I couldn't get that shot anymore, and then I'd have to resort to dribbling, which was not my strong suit. So my game was, please let me be open so I can shoot an open three. Now, when I transitioned, I started playing against women. Okay, I got a little weaker. So before I transitioned at 5'8", I could touch the rim. I could, obviously I was more built. I could, but after I transitioned, I lost some of that. I could now reach two loops up the net. I lost a little bit of speed. But what I noticed the most of all is that when I played against women, the person who was closing on me was no longer 6'1", or 5'10", or 6'3". She was 5'4", 5'3", 5'6". And I'm sitting here at 5'8", and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this 5'8" girl can shoot the three, and how come I don't have a post game? So immediately there, even though like I was weaker, I wasn't as fast, I wasn't as strong, I didn't have the same vertical, but I had some advantage that I would not have had if I hadn't gone through male puberty, because my sisters are 5'3" and 5'1". So it's unlikely without 5 years of testosterone, I would have been at 5'8". I came from a family of shorties. So the way I see this, the way I frame this, is not that I'm the best women's basketball player in the world. I was far from it. Still, like I played on a competitive team. There were women who would take my ass up and down the court, but I had an advantage that I would not have had if I hadn't gone through male puberty. If I hadn't gone through male puberty, I'd be a 5'2" person who maybe could shoot a three.
Maybe.
And 5'4" and 5, maybe. And there'd be 5'4" and 5'6" girls closing out on me and getting in my face. So that's, so now I can say that is a clear advantage that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone through male puberty. At the same time, there's a lot of advantages that people have. They have rich parents. They have rich parents who can put them in coaching 3 days a week, right? They were born in the richest country in the world where they get fed when they're young, as opposed to immigrating here from the global south where they didn't have those advantages. I had I had a mom who didn't work, and if she wanted to, she could have picked me up from some practice every day and given me a nice meal, whereas maybe some other people didn't. So there's all sorts of advantages that a person has that we just don't think about when we talk about fairness. So Oh, I think I froze.
No, I still got you.
No, you didn't. You're good.
I'm good? Okay,
Yeah.
I froze on my screen. But anyways, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying in the middle of my big rant is that there's a whole lot of things that we consider unfair about the male puberty that other people have advantages that we completely ignore. Like, we don't ask, oh, was her mom and dad a college athlete? We don't ask, did her mom put her in gymnastic lessons every evening after school? We don't ask, did her mom have well supported during pregnancy so she wasn't born small? We don't ask those questions that all contribute to fairness. And what it really comes down to is the reason we focus so hard on the amount of advantage that I as a trans woman have, or you as a trans woman have, comes back to the fact that people just don't like trans women. And that's really what it comes down to. And now, that story that I'm telling, maybe I'm just because I'm telling it and I've heard it myself tell it a bunch of times, that sounds compelling to me. It's where I don't deny that I have an advantage, but I point out the advantages that every other person who succeeds at sports probably had at some level, whether it's genetic advantages, whether it's being raised well advantages, whether it's being rich as F advantages, whether it's being...
But I would counter that every cis woman has the potential to have all of those advantages you just described, except being born a man. Being born a man is the only advantage.
Oh, no one's born a man.
Oh, no.
You don't walk out the womb 18 years old. You don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, though, right? Like,
but here's my counter. Like,
No,
yes,
I really
Jordan,
don't.
right?
sex
No, I
sex
don't
as a
have it,
man
no.
at birth, or a boy, like however you want to call it, born male.
My old thing is, though, no two human
dude.
beings come out the assembly line the same. But to get to your point, Laura, that's fair. That's fair. And no one, and here's the thing, I don't know other people dispute it, but I don't dispute it. I don't dispute it. But I also look at it, there are so many line items that go into an athlete that most people are saying that's the dividing line, and it's far from it. Because I look at it like, yeah, I may have had some with me, like, for example, you had an experience where you were a pretty good athlete. You grew into a body to where you were pretty good at your sport. Me, my puberty started late, very late. Try playing high school football in Nebraska at 5'3", 120. You either have to have serious dissociation with reality, or you got to be nuts. I was the latter. I'll admit that. I was a crazy kid. I ran down and covered kickoffs.
So is the answer puberty? Is that the answer for inclusion?
I think one of the answers is let parents work with healthcare professionals to make the best decisions for themselves. And if it's that particular kid, let those parents make the decisions in line with healthcare professionals, mental health professionals. Let those parents line up and do what's best for their kid if they're listening to their kid and they're believing them. That's the first step, because the fact of the matter is the very thing that kills a lot of this argument, people want to take off, people want to take it away. Textbook example is Adrian Hernandez right now. I mean, by what metric can you look that kid in the eye and say, you're a threat to us to a point where we want to forfeit a volleyball game?
But that's exactly what's happening.
Well,
But yeah, that is exactly what happened.
You might not like that it's happening, but it's happening.
Is
No, I know
experiencing
it's
male
no,
puberty
no.
the the deciding factor then? Like, would that be something
I
to
think
argue?
I think for some people it may be, but my thing is we have to look at everything in context and look at all the line items, not just that one.
Right, because we don't
If
have
we're
any good
really
data.
if no no if we wa- here's the thing. There's only one way you're going to get quote unquote good data. You actually have to set benchmarks. Let people compete, and then you got to study the data. That's the only way. But cutting people off and cutting the potential data off at the knees, that's not going to. All
Well,
that's
I
going
think
to serve is people to discriminate. And
think
if
there's
like I
yeah.
said, if you're for discrimination, okay, me, I'm not.
But I
For
think there's a
anyone.
common a common story of a person who probably believes that puberty is the deciding factor, and that also believes that children shouldn't be prevented from experiencing their puberty. So then it's
Well,
that no one would ever
answer
meet the
to-
standard, right? By that
My
standard,
answer
because
to my answer to those people is let kids. I agree with you. Let kids be kids. Let cisgender kids be cisgender kids, and let transgender kids be transgender kids.
Yeah, so I don't
And
think that's
let
a problem
family
to solve
and
today.
let families make the best decisions
Sure.
for themselves. There should be no place for anyone who doesn't have a medicine degree to tell a family what they can do in regards to their own child. And that's at the crux of what it's really about. And one thing, Laura, you've talked about this. Laura, you've talked about this. Joe, I know you've talked about this, and my view on 99% of what we're talking about on this show, you will probably disagree with me. And
That's okay. That's why you're here.
And but here's the thing. But I'm okay with that because at least we're talking.
exactly.
We need
that's,
to
that's
be.
why we want you here. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you guys still see and hear me? I know I'm going to say that a
Oh,
hundred
yeah.
times. My screen's completely frozen.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
seeing
Still
myself
got you.
frozen
I can
in
see
this
you.
really-
Oh, you're still moving on our screen.
Okay, excellent. So it's just on my end. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit to, one of the arguments and why I've sort of become more vocal in my opposition to talking about inclusion in transports is precisely because of the challenges we've had in telling the story. And which is that, in this environment, in this last 5 years, whether it's because they've had the money, they've had the platform, they've had the better story, whatever the reason is that we went from a time where people were more or less indifferent to the presence of trans women in sports. Joe and I were talking before you came on about how we remembered an ad from like the 2019 or 2020, where which featured as a selling point that a trans woman was wearing their shoe or their outfit for Nike, the trans woman from Brazil, to a point where no one would even dare talk
Oh
about
no,
it.
you're talking about Adidas.
Adidas.
Okay, sorry.
That's my
Adidas.
girl. No,
I
that's
said
my girl
Adidas.
Tiffany. That's my girl Tiffany whose team won a championship this year.
So my fear is that for whatever reason, we've lost the rhetorical battle for now. I'm not saying we can't win it back at some point. Maybe we're down. If you want to use a football analogy, we're down by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. We're down right now in this game. I'm not saying we can't win it. Maybe we can pull it out, but right now we're down.
Ooh,
lost
I
her.
think we lost her.
We lost her.
Just know this. You may disagree with me on the sports issue, but I fully agree and will back up your right to serve.
Oh, well, thank you.
100%.
Well, thank you.
100%.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just love testing because I come from a more right-leaning background, and I hear so much of that all the time that I love hearing what people have to say to those arguments. I think there's a place for parity in sports. I just don't know where it is because most of the data is low quality and sucks. So
Actually, it's not. It's not that it's low quality because it's not. It's just that it's not numerous, and we need more. We need more.
right, which
and
would
we need more
require
across the
require
board.
allowing trans people to play sports in order to capture
And that's the
that
thing.
data.
But
Right.
here's where my dividing line is. Number one, you've got to set rules.
Yeah,
You've got to set standards. You have to. And I know that there is a lot, and I know there's a lot of people who say, no, there should be no, you got to set them. You have to set standards. Like, for example, I have no problem dealing with the standards that I have to deal with to play women's tackle football. I have no problem with them.
Right. Well, just like the Army
I
had
have
standards for trans
yeah,
people, then not all trans people can meet the Army standards, but
and
they
my
had
thing
standards. Yeah.
yeah, but the point is, I have no problem. I have no problem sending my data in. Yeah, it sucks. It's a pain in the butt, and
CrossFit
it's a
was the
pain.
same way.
Yeah, and it's a pain in the butt to have to walk people through the stuff. See, the first league that I joined, I actually helped write their policy because they really didn't have one. Yeah, they set this marker, but they didn't know what the marker meant. So because I so wanted to play, I sent all my medical data in. I even sent Strava data in and said, here's where I was, here's where I am now, here's the curve, everything. And then the commissioner of the league calls me and says, you're fully eligible to play. And by the way, we didn't expect you to send this much in, but we had to talk to you. We had to talk to your endocrinologist and your doctor about it because we didn't understand what we were seeing and we didn't understand what all this meant.
Yeah.
But once we were able to walk
I
them
agree,
through it, I think that's one of the places where we have to start. We have to start
totally
by actually
agree.
talking to people.
Yeah.
And
For
even
CrossFit
talking
competition, it was a certain level of testosterone, and I met those requirements, and then they changed that on me. They said, no, actually, now you have to compete with the men.
It went from 10 to 5. They dropped it. I remember that because I covered that.
Yeah, this past season they changed it. Now I was never competitive anyway, but I was kind of bummed because I kind of looked at CrossFit as being this egalitarian sport that said, look, we're going to find the fittest no matter what, and as long as these certain things are met, you're probably not going to outshine a cis woman because our test is so broad, because it's not a specialized test. And that's what I was like, oh, this is so cool, because running is running. It's specialized. Maybe there's an advantage that can't be won with parity through hormones or whatever. But CrossFit, you're doing everything. You're doing running and swimming. Like, it's everything. So, like, all the advantages should be neutralized as long as you meet that hormone requirement, right?
But see, here's the thing. The advantages will never be neutralized. There's always going to be, for example, and to me, advantages by themselves, to me, my definition of fair is this. This is my definition of fair. Is the playing field the same for everybody? For example, if you have a 400-meter dash, is everybody running 400 meters? Do everybody start from the same place? Does the clock start the same for everybody? If that's the answer, then at that point, it's about how you train, it's about how you coach, it's about who you are and the type of talent you bring to the table. For example, me going up against our best offensive lineman, who's been an all-league selection in 4 different leagues, and can often use me as a water pick, it's not unfair. I got to figure out a way to beat her.
Sure.
And it's the same thing.
When I say advantages, I'm talking about the either the male puberty advantages or the fact that they're born a man. So that's all I mean by advantage. I don't mean all advantage. Of course, there's so many.
My whole thing is
even
that one. People make more of it to me than what it is.
Well, of course.
Now here's the thing. I don't.
Yeah.
Like for example, do I want some high school kid saying? Do I want a kid in high school saying, I'm a girl now so I can play with the girl? No, we don't. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that.
Right, but there's no filtering, and it's always affirm, or at least it was.
No, in fact,
that was the problem.
But here's the thing. Well, that's a whole different issue.
Sure.
But my whole thing, but my thing is, that's why you set standard. And in fact, in most of the country, here's the big misnomer. And most of the professional transphobes. I'm talking about the professional transphobes, not average people who are getting sucked in hysteria.
Sure.
I'm talking about the people who have a vested financial and political interest in selling the nonsense. They're the ones who are saying there's no regulations, when the fact in most of the country there is. Now, the states that don't, you know what they do have? Robust access to HRT.
Right.
Because I can tell you this from experience. In Connecticut, we have a number of trans girls and trans boys, non-binary kids who are playing high school sport, and just about all of them in one form or another started HRT or on it because there's access where I live. In Connecticut, there's robust access, even though now these hospitals are all getting scared and cutting the access off.
Sure.
But before the cutoffs, if you wanted them and your parents are willing to sign up on it, you could get things done.
Gotcha.
You could get things done. That's one. And two, another thing I often tell people, because I've seen this, because I mentor trans youth, is that endocrinologists are conservative in regards to me, and I'm in my 50s. They are double conservative when it comes to kids. They don't miss a trick
Of course.
because they
Of
can.
course. Yeah.
Now, if there's, I will say this, if there's adjustments that need to be made to say WPATH standards, I say let's have the conversation. I am
Definitely.
for having conversations, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that we're having is that a lot of people on all sides are afraid to have conversation. Let's have It's not
100%.
transphobic it's not transphobic to have a conversation.
100%. All right.
And I'm a
We got
person who
Laura back.
believes
Yes,
I'm a
that's
person
right.
who believes parents should be allowed to make if a parent listens to their child, we ought to be affirming that parent. If a parent's willing to affirm their child, I'm all for backing them up. But the
Sure.
thing is though, nothing happens without parents. So let people make decisions. This is one place where honestly, government can keep its nose out of it. And I think we'll have better results if you do.
I
So
agree.
But
yeah,
I think as far as within the community, we need to also continue to always have conversations. WPATH regulations should be reviewed yearly. If we're really
Right.
serious, we shouldn't be taking 4 or 5 years. We should be always constantly looking at what we're doing and how we're doing it. I have no problem with that.
Of
None.
course. Yeah, I think it's about Laura, did you want to start wrapping up or?
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm back to wrap up. Yeah, no, I was just saying I was in the middle of what I thought was gold medal rant, but the coach thought I was getting heated and took me out. So I've cooled, so I've cooled down a bit. I don't know how far I got. I guess I'm here to close the game.
Well, you're the host
Well,
of the meeting, so it's like I couldn't have
you're
kicked
the
you out if I
host. Well,
wanted to.
I mean, one thing we do have to talk about it. One thing we should be getting to
But I know Joe has
what
to
are the
go on the hard stop.
solutions?
We can keep talking.
I know I mean,
Yeah.
We can go all night, baby. But
I wouldn't mind that.
okay, I know Joe has to get going because she's got
Just
I know
just
Joe's got to make people laugh tonight.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna go
I gotta make
watch
people cry
people make
tonight.
me laugh. So
Mm.
yeah. Networking. No, yeah,
For
just
your
at the
networking.
half hour. But no, like if you all want to keep going, that's fine. I just didn't know if Laura, if you had any other questions you wanted to ask on our last, 7-8 minutes
Yeah,
or.
I missed like 10, 15 minutes what we were talking about. I saw you got into talking about pediatric gender transition, which, but
Just at the end there, it was more
just at the
focused
end.
on.
Okay.
We were just talking about the
Actually, it's more
military and
focused. I
stuff.
just wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk to Joe because I think what so many veterans are going through right now, and I know quite a few people who who are retired military or active duty, who are trans,
Yeah.
who are getting the short unfair end of the stick. And for me, if you allow this in the public sector, it's going to seep into the private sector. And
Sure.
that's something we don't want. That's taking away a piece of what makes us as Americans us. To me, that
Well,
takes
yeah.
that takes away.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys are anymore, to be honest. Watching from up here,
I
but
mean, Canadians are smart to realize that you don't want your own Trump, and they told Polieve to take a hike.
yeah,
Think
yeah,
you can.
yeah.
Good job on you, Canada.
He's still hanging around. He just won. He won a seat back in Parliament.
Yeah, I know
W.
they flew him into some safe seat somewhere, and he won it
Yeah, yeah.
because he
Basically,
lost the one he
yeah. They
had.
basically flew him to Canada's Alabama, and
Gotta love that parliament. Gotta love parliamentary systems, huh?
yes, but no, like we were talking about before with sort of all the advantages that we don't seem to care about. And the point I was trying to make is as that when we were talking about we have a losing battle in sports right now. And that we're losing, and when we talk too much about sports it turns people against us. And what I was really wanting to come around to saying is politically, as much as you love sports, as much as I've enjoyed being part of sports, is I recognize that it's just not, or to me, it seems like the less we talk about sports, the better it might be for the other things, not just as a purely strategic matter. like taking out the questions of whether we belong or don't belong, and taking out the questions of whether we have an advantage that can't be otherwise overcome or not. But just that we've lost the rhetorical battle here by so much that when we talk about sports, it makes us seem unreasonable to people who might be predisposed to support us on the other issues, and it galvanizes them and and then when they hear from Riley Gaines, and when they hear from when they hear from Martina Navratilova, from J.K. Rowling, whoever the people are on that side, that they're like, you know what, those people are making sense. I think those are my people. Um, and these are these are the kind of people that in a different world might be allies if like and I know I take a lot of flack from from trans activists on this, is that I believe that we should focus on the things that are important for trans people to survive in society, and it just means let's just shut our mouths about sports right now, let them have sports for now, and once we win back our credibility, then we can incrementally start making the case back for why we belong. Um, and that's purely as a purely political, strategic platforming of just like, I'm tired. I just know we can't talk about this right now because I know it's an unwinnable battle to me right now. Um, what would be your critique of that as a pragmatic approach?
You're going to pragmatic yourself right out of everything else. Because the fact of the matter is, okay, concede, go ahead, concede sports. What's the next thing you'll concede?
But I'd rather
What's the next thing you'll concede? Because there's always the next thing. My thing is, don't give an inch. Instead, come into the battle and come into the battle and have the conversations. It's not going to be easy, but for me, I just don't see it the same way as, like, for example, the way I do my activism. And yes, I'm an activist and damn proud of it.
Yeah.
And I make no bones about that, because I'm a trans person. I will protect my rights, and I'm going to be active in protecting them and defending them. I believe you got to fight. You got to fight all the fights, and not just that fight, but the next one and the next one and the next one. Sports is not going to be easy, but we got to. Hey, it's each one teach one. But in line with each and one teach one, you just don't fight that battle on its own. You also tie it into all the other things that we're dealing with, because if you concede at this one point, they're going to take the next one, and they're going to take the next one, because their goal is not kicking us out of sports. Their goal is kicking us out of life.
No, and I totally.
And here's the thing. I understand where you're coming from as a course of pragmatism. I get it. I may not agree with you, but I understand it. I'm not going to necessarily say you're wrong and point at you, because that's counterproductive, because I understand where you're coming from, and that's a very legitimate and valid place that you're coming from.
Yeah.
But my thing is, at the same time, it all comes down to one question: you're either for your rights or you're not.
Yeah.
And in my mind, like a perfect example, even when we are willing to give a compromise, they'll roll right over it, and then they'll take the next thing. Perfect example, what the CIF did in California, which, by the way, was a bad idea, not only from a rights standpoint, but also from a sports standpoint. And that's why I was dead set against what I called the California capitulation.
Which I call the
And you will never get me to agree. I will tell Gavin Newsom to his face, you will never get me to agree with it. Never.
So, yeah, because like the analogy I use, like, you talk about you give an inch, you give a mile, is that if I'm standing on unsteady, if I'm trying to have a fight on unsteady ground, I want to move to steadier ground to have that fight. And right now, sports seems like very unsteady ground, and so I'm gonna give up that sliver of territory, whatever it is, and I'm gonna get myself on a sure foot, and I'm gonna fight you hard on the things that where I think I know we're right on access to healthcare. I know we're right about our place in society. I know we're right about having the proper gender indicators. Those are the things I know I'm right on. Sports, I'm not sure how right because there's the data could go a lot of different ways. We talk about what the data might show here and what the data might show, but it could go a lot of different ways. And we're losing the rhetorical battle. So I'm like, you know what? Let them have this one. This is hard land to defend. And then I'm going to fight you really hard on the rest of it, where I'm standing on solid ground, because because I just think, the more time, the more resources we spend here, the harder that, I recognize we're talking an analogy here, but the harder those fights, the harder those fights become. And then the second point is, I think we're talking about different thems. So when you say they are going to take it all from us, I agree with you. There is this core, hardcore, unrelenting, non-repentant, will take it to the day they die, transphobic, I hate you guys, I want you guys out of society, like the kind of people who say things like every transgender person is a problem for society, or the kind of people who say I want to take transgenderism root and branch and remove it from our country. Those kind of people, I think I quoted there, I quoted Helen Joyce, and I quoted Michael Knowles.
Right.
Both have said these kind of sentiments. I'm never going to convince them on my rights.
Exactly.
Right? Fuck those guys. The kind of people that I'm trying to convince are the kind of people who might hear us making a case for sports and being like, I don't know, and then listen to someone like J.K. Rowling or Martina Navratilova, who seems like a reasonable person. They're not spitting fire, they're not venomous, but they're
No,
saying
Martina Margaret Cordolovas has been spitting fire for years. Let's just be honest about who she is and what she is.
Yeah, but she comes
And
across as yeah. And
I understand where you're going, but
yeah.
Martina Margaret Cordova,
Yeah.
the real on her is, and I will be the first person to say it, Martina is doing to trans people what people did to her when she came out 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
And no, but here's the thing. But here's the other part of the problem. The people on our side are not saying that, and we need to be. See, Laura, Joe, here's the thing for me. Not everybody's going to be fighting the same fight. For example, Joe, you're going to be on the flank talking about healthcare. I'll be there right with you. But the sports, I'll take that one.
I mean,
I'll
I'm
stand on that.
fighting the trans military one. That's what
And
I'm
you know
fighting.
what? I'll back you up on that
Of course.
100%. I'll back you up.
I
The
want
point
people
is
fighting for the
that-
things they believe in. Like, even if I don't necessarily agree with it or think it's worth my time, like, if that's what you want to do, go ahead.
Well, but my whole thing is, if we concede, especially with young people, if we concede there, then you're opening the door to a lot of concessions that even if you don't care, you may not care about sports, but the people that are trying to make that concession are going to try and all of a sudden push you out of a locker room, push you out of a back room, push you out of activities, push you out of education. And we've been there as a country before. Sure. I don't want to go back there. So no, I'm gonna hold that line. I'm gonna hold the lines. We got to be able to hold the lines everywhere. And does it mean that we have to get better rhetorically? Of course, yes, we do. We always got to get better there. We always have to get better. That's activism 101. You always have to hone your game. And if there's something that's not working, then you gotta go back to the drawing board and try something else. But for the most part, for myself, I don't want to concede 1 inch to the professional transphobes. But on the other side, I want to talk to that person who may be unsure, not point fingers at them and say that they're nasty and they're wrong, but meet them where they are, and then we move from there. And it's not going to be easy. It's hard conversations, and not everybody's going to want to do them. So, hey, I volunteer for that mission. I'm ready to go.
Okay, so
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I know it's 7:30, and I know Joe's got to go network because she's making it big in comedy as we speak, and she's going big places. She had a big show at a casino this week. Very
all right.
Week, yeah. Opened up for Ian Lara.
And so it's just
nice.
Bigger and better. So I wanted to get to it. I feel like in some ways, I know I missed a little bit of the conversation. I know I'm wearing my hockey jersey. I probably should have worn the stripes today. Worn a ref's jersey, or at least in hockey, the lines people, the ones who break apart fights.
No, there wasn't a fight. We just that's the thing.
I wanted to test.
Well, it's like in hockey too. Like those guys go at each other, and then the linesmen come, and then they're kind of like.
Well, my whole thing is we're gonna go at each other, and then it's gonna be like beer league. We're all gonna have a beer afterwards.
Exactly.
But the biggest thing is we need to keep talking. We need to stop shouting at each other and talk to each other, because we're all we've got, but we're all we need. And that's the thing. That's something we say often at Trans Lifeline, is that we're all we got, but we're all we need.
Amen.
And that's one of the reasons why I want to give Trans Lifeline a quick plug, because that's why I'm strident as I am and the way I speak as I am, but also live life out. And that's my thing. I want our people living life out. My attitude is I take a twofold approach to being who I am. I don't shout it from the rooftops, but I don't hide it either. I didn't transition to hide. I transitioned to live.
Exactly.
And as scripture tells us, live life and live more abundantly. Yes, I'm a Christian. And I'm a believer that in getting out there. And part of getting out there is doing things, being out there and getting out there. And at times, getting out there and get your hands dirty a little bit and have those tough conversations, because that's the only thing that's going to turn the tide that Laura's talking about and that Joe's talking about. Each one teach one, which means you can't retreat behind the castle walls. You got to get out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Laura, did you want to continue on, or are we going to
I'll
just sign
carry
off?
on for a bit. So I'll just pause a
Okay.
little bit in the podcast part.
All right. Thank you all.
That's one of the biggest issues that we do have, is that we don't tell our stories. I think it's the exact opposite. We don't, and we need to. And we're not willing to at times, I think we're a little bit too selective in what stories we tell. For example, I'm more than willing to tell mine, because it's a beautiful story. But there are certain people who are in mainstream activism who feel I'm not the right voice, I'm not the right face, I'm not the right whatever.
Yeah.
And I think at times we try and play too much for the optics and not enough to get the stories out there.
Yeah.
And I know it's a needle to
it's
thread.
hard. And
It's
I
a
don't
needle
want
to thread, no
yeah.
doubt.
And it's hard because like I recognize, like, and part of the things that I struggle with is I recognize that part of the and this isn't just talking about trans stuff, but part of the reason that I can talk to people, you know, uh, you know, is that I present the way I do, and
Hmm.
and as much as I like to pretend that, and I'm not saying I'm not a face in the sense, like, I don't look like Samantha Lux or any like the real, the super pretty young
The
young
people who got the opportunity to do this
to do this, yeah,
at
whatever.
12, 13,
But,
14 years
what,
old.
what I'm saying,
And
what I'm saying is I'm presentable enough that people aren't necessarily turning away when I'm talking, and I recognize that as much as looks shouldn't matter, that
they
they
do. Come on, let's be
that they
real.
do.
They
Let's be
do.
real. Let's be
They
real. We can all
do.
talk about how they shouldn't matter, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you've told me in other conversations about because I don't always see things through this filter, the filter of racialization, and
Oh yeah. And we don't have to and here's the thing. We as trans people, we need to deal with that.
yeah,
As a community, if we're truly serious about liberation, and that's my thing. I'm about liberation. And I understand, and see, that's one of the biggest sticking points at first I had with you and with Transnormal at first, until I really listened to your show and really dug into where you're coming from.
let
See,
me have it.
and I think, and I also think that's where I think the blind spot with yourself and Joe can be in regards to activism. I think we
Okay.
both have blind spots each way. Yes, I'm an activist, but I believe in liberation. But what does liberation mean? Liberation just basically means choice. At its core, I want us to have a choice. For example, you have a beautiful life. You have a husband who adores you. You have 2 kids. I want you and many others like you to have that choice to build your life the way you want it, without rancor and without bigotry and without prejudice. That's what liberation means to me, that we can have the choice. Because be honest, do you really think really think I like being activist Karleigh Webb? There are days I don't like being
Oh, for
activist
sure.
Karleigh Webb,
Yeah.
but I do it. Why? Because I do it. Because I want to get to that day where I don't want to do it anymore, where I don't need to do it anymore. Because there is no Colin Wright. There's no Colin Wright looking to put us in boxcars. There's
Yeah.
no Michael Knowles. I want to fight for the day when Michael Knowles can be told to shut up. You're not eradicating anyone.
Yeah. Like I want
I'm
to.
working towards that
Yeah.
day.
Like I wanted to get to the point because like I'm Jewish, is that I know there's anti-Semites out there. There are always going to be
Hmm.
anti-Semites out there. I can't control the fact that I can't eradicate anti-Semitism from the face of the earth. But what's essentially happened, to some degree, I'm not saying it's happened completely, is that it's in the shadows. And nobody
Hmm.
wants to be publicly, there are very few people who want to be publicly identified as an anti-Semite. People might think things, people might say things in private, but there are very few people that are making anti-Semitic arguments in public that have any real platform, and
Right.
the ones that do, it's only to other anti-Semites. Um, and that's the way it used to be about trans. They're always transphobes, but it's gotten out of the box. It's sort of escaped. It's sort of like it's a jailbreak right now when it comes to
Right.
trans people, where anybody can be transphobic anywhere they want, and there's no social censure against it. You can say something awful and transphobic, and people will still think, that's fine. It's okay to be that transphobic. And what I would love, like you said, is not that we're going to get rid of the transphobes, but it's where nobody wants to listen to them anymore because they realize they're what kind of people they are. Just like, yeah, they're still anti-Semites, but no one wants to listen to them anymore. No one wants them at their parties. No one wants them on their shows.
Right.
No one wants to hire them. No one wants to say I did this thing with this anti-Semite. That's where we need to get the story back to not where Michael Knowles is gonna like explode in a puff of smoke, but where he's gonna talk and everyone's just gonna be like, I don't want to listen to this guy. And so back, part of what when I talk about, being out there as someone who is presentable, I'm trying to thread a line between people who say, well, I'm just in it for me. And like, yeah, like the things I'm advocating for will benefit me. I'm not going to lie about that. But I also recognize that because I can say certain things, I can get these people on board so that they're willing to, it's like maybe this is a bad analogy. You go to a bar, and they put the girls outside the bar, and they put these pretty girls outside the bar
Of course.
because that's what gets you in the door.
Hmm.
You got the pretty girl outside, you get in the door, and then you see, okay, this is a place I might want to stay or look around in. And if you can get the people if you can use, I'm not saying I'm the pretty girl, but I'm the person who can present well. And if I can get you in the door and get you as part of the conversation, then you can hear the rest of the story. But if I can't get you in the door, you're not going to want to listen to the rest of the story. And that's sort of how I've been trying to frame my period. It's not just like I'm a pick me or I'm just looking to save the white girls or the pretty girls or the passable girls or the ones with money or the ones with jobs or the ones with this. But it's like, I know because I'm white and because I present well and because I can, because I talk the way I do, that I can maybe get you listening. And then once you're listening, maybe you'll be willing to hear the parts of the story that you wouldn't have been willing to listen to earlier.
As long as you're doing that, I'm for it.
Yeah,
Because ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to. Those of us who have a little bit more, we got to get in the game,
yeah,
and we have to get in the game. That's what has me out there in the game, because I know I have had unique opportunities, in part because I've had so much positive community around me, and the best way that I can pay them back is paying it forward and helping that next person, especially the young people.
yeah,
Good, and that's one thing I know. I know that you have misgivings, and a number of your guests on previous shows have misgivings about it. But my thing is, I'm going to defend these young people's opportunity to move into themselves with vigor and with fire, because I would have loved to have that chance.
yeah. And I'd say
I
that
would have
too.
loved to have
Yeah.
that
Like,
opportunity when I was 14, 15 years old. It would save me a world of hurt. I
yeah.
mean,
Like I like to think that, like, I transitioned 27, but I always like to think like, what if, we all have, I know we're getting off sports here, but we all
no,
have,
but sports is a part of this.
yeah,
See, I mean, a lot of people try and make it like it's the sports issue here and the rest of trans. No, this is part of the experience.
yeah,
I started my transition at 46. At 46 years old.
yeah.
And I don't want some kid right now who has the opportunity waiting 45 years for
Oh no,
that.
and I don't
That
want
was
them waiting.
hell.
I don't want them waiting 27 years. And I'm sort of thinking
Yeah.
at the time, like when I was 14, and my parents confronted me because they'd found all the things. They found all the things, and they confronted me, and they asked like, "What is this all about?" And I made up some story. And I always think like, what if I, that inflection point? What if I would have said, you know what, I really want to be a girl, and it would have shocked, like it might, I don't even know if it would have shocked them because there were things obviously that made them wonder before that, but I didn't. And then I waited and waited and waited, and I always think like, what would have happened if I told? And I don't. And to be honest, my parents are good people. They're still in my life. I just came back from spending a week with them. I don't know what they would have said in 1986. I don't know what they would have said.
See, we're the same age, so we get it.
Yeah,
Because in
and
19, I don't see my mom and dad circa 1986,
yeah,
growing up in the deep Midwest, buying it.
yeah.
If we did not have, what vocabulary did we have?
No, we didn't. Like there was no internet. I had a book that I stole from the library. I had the occasional, whatever you saw on Sally Jesse Raphael, and
Or Jerry Springer?
or Jerry Springer. Oh, Jerry Springer wasn't there yet, but that it was still like when the
Yeah.
shows were sort of semi-reputable, and whatever book I could steal from the library, that's what I knew, and so I didn't have the words for it either. But I also think that even if I had transitioned at, let's say, 17 or 16 or something like that, would I have made the choices I made today that put me where I am? And I don't know. Like, I probably wouldn't have gotten to med school. I probably wouldn't have gotten to, like that. But my life could have unspooled in a million different ways that would have been equally rewarding. Who knows who knows where life would have taken me. But it could have also taken me some bad places, for all I know. Because if you're a 17-year-old trans girl,
But the, at the
there's a lot
same
of,
time, consider where our society was, and that's the
yeah,
biggest part of it. We
yeah,
have language. Young people now have language.
yeah,
Parents have resources. Young people have language. We have a broader media landscape where this can be talked about and it can be discussed. We didn't have that in the 1980s. We didn't have it.
no, like,
The
and
fact is, we
at
didn't.
that time, I was
No,
just
I
like,
know you're not
yeah,
denying that.
yeah,
That's what just drives me now to protect the younglings, as the late great Monica Roberts would say, protect the younglings,
yeah,
because I want them to have this.
yeah,
I want parents who are affirming their kids to have every resource available to them, whether their kids transition or not. And see, that's the other side to this. A lot of people say, "What if you're wrong?" Hell, I had family tell me when I came out, "What if you're wrong?" I said, "Well, if I'm wrong, then I know more about me now than I did at the beginning," which is
yeah.
never a bad. Self-discovery is never a bad thing.
Yeah,
But
and I think you're absolutely right. Like there are people who are like very emotionally and intellectually mature who can say things like that. Like if I transition, it turns out to be the wrong choice for me. That at least I now know that it's the wrong choice for me, and I can just focus on the rest of my life as a dude or whatever. And that's a very sort of emotionally intelligent way to do it. But then we also see the other side, which are people who don't have that emotional intelligence or the familial support or whatever it is, who when those things happen to, and when they learn or come to learn that this wasn't the right choice, that get pretty angry about it. And those kind of people, like the regretful detransitioners, whoever they are certainly making things pretty hard. It's a narrative that plays so well in the press about, oh, look at this poor girl was given testosterone and it ruined her body and now she's trying to reclaim it and she'll never forgive the people who did it to her. That's a very compelling story, as
but
opposed
I
to,
will say I put some of that on my business. I
yeah,
put some of that on a fourth estate that is so busy
those,
trying to chase clicks and chase headlines that
yeah,
we're
you
not
like that
doing our
story.
jobs as
Yeah,
journalists.
they don't want the story of the detransitioner who says, yeah, I did this for a few years. I went on testosterone. Yeah, maybe my voice is a little deeper now, and maybe I've got a little bit of a stronger jawline than I would have otherwise. But yeah, live and learn. They don't want that story. That story is like,
And here's the thing: as a journalist, I want all the stories.
yeah,
I want all the stories, and then because call me naive, but I believe in the average person's ability, if they have information, to make the best decision for
yeah,
themselves. I don't see, and that's one thing I do tell. That's one thing I'll say point blank to the people who may be on the fence, especially on, be it on the sports issue or the other issue, these people believe these people believe that you'll buy anything, that you'll buy anything.
Okay.
Buy anything.
Well,
They will play to
you'll
your
buy anything.
fears.
You'll buy anything if it's all they're selling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And here
If
I
there's only
am,
one thing on the shelf, you're going to buy it.
and I understand we need a compelling argument, but my thing is though I agree with that. And I find that for myself and what I try to do, the best compelling argument is just come with the facts. And here come take their talking points and then come with the facts.
Yeah.
For example, trans women are dominating, and then you just show where's the dominance? A win here, a win there. That's not dominant. I mean, if you know sports, you know what dominance looks like.
No, I know dominance.
Or in another way,
But it's still so hard. Like when they show, even if it's like a regional meet, like some mid-level competition, and I think we probably see this the most, like for whatever reason, in cycling. Cycling seems to have a lot of this, where they show a podium, and it's got like, maybe first and third are trans women in some regional, like not even full state event, and and the physical picture of seeing bulkier, and I recognize women come in all sizes. I totally get that, but when they show like these two people who are bulky, and then they show the little petite, often like he's still athletic but relatively petite.
Oh yeah. Oh, I understand. Oh,
You
don't
show
get me
that
wrong.
picture, and everyone's like, "That ain't right. That ain't right."
I'll give you this.
Yeah.
Laura, I will give you this. That's the reason why after every game, I make sure I look like this when I walk out that locker room.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of hard to look. It's kind of nobody looks cute after playing 75, 80 snaps when you've been knocking people around and getting knocked around.
Yeah.
But my team knows Karleigh's going to take a little time, and the main reason why I do it is the fact of the matter is I know how my image can get used in the wrong way by bad actors.
Yeah.
I
And we
know
saw that,
the game.
a couple weeks ago with what's her name, Mouncy.
Now,
rugby
I
player
do want to
Australia.
talk about that.
Okay.
Because,
that's okay.
see, here's the thing about Hannah Mouncey that a lot of people don't realize. Number one, Hannah Mouncey's been at this for a minute. She just didn't show up last week.
Yeah.
She's played two different sports. As the woman she is. She played Aussie rules football.
Okay. Oh, Ross Rules
She
football.
played Aussie rules football, and she's played team handball for Australia. Now, number one, and now one thing about Aussie rules, and this is something that I do support very highly, is the concept. Most Australian elite sports, in regards to transgender women, they do everything on case-by-case basis. What they do is they send the candidate athlete through physical testing, where that athlete is judged against an aggregate of the top 1 or 2% players in a given discipline within that league. And then they go by the aggregate.
Yeah.
And they go, and then they.
Well, if you're off the scale, you're off the scale. You don't get to play, kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing. It depends on how far off the scale you are.
Yeah.
But the point is that Hannah was not anywhere near off the scale. Yeah, she's good. She's a very skilled athlete, but a lot of people are using a lot of pictures, and they're using a lot of media in effect and that's one thing that people have to realize. See, that's one of my biggest things I try to do in the advocacy I do is get people to understand how professional transphobes use the media and use the medium to sell something that's not true, but make you think it's happening everywhere.
Yeah. And so you see those pictures of Hannah Mouncey where she's in the middle of her, like, you probably aren't having people taking snaps at you in the middle of the game, but she's, they're taking pictures where she looks like, and where she's standing next to a smaller teammate and,
Yes.
and people see that picture and they go, whoa. And it's the same thing. In my real life where I see this is like sometimes I'll be with my friends and I'm tall among my friends because most of my friends are cis women and they're 5'2" or 5'3". And I remember, and often I see pictures where it's like there's 4 of them and then there's me at 5'8.5" looking like I'm 6'5". And I look at that picture and go, oh my God, I look like a giant, like never take a picture of me like this again, like crouch down in the corner, because I sort of, in my mind, I look at that and I go, well, everyone's going to read me here. But I recognize that like at 5'8", I don't stand out that much. I'm a tall-ish woman, but I'm not like, and no one looks at me and go like, "Whoa, like, what's the weather up there?" It's, but if you take a picture surrounded by short people, you look like a giant.
Exactly. But people use that to manipulate.
Yeah,
I've had people online take my picture and try to say there's a 6'3", 240-pound black man playing tackle
yeah,
football.
yeah, and
I'm 5'10", 175. Now, granted, tall, yeah. But we've got people. I play. There's a player for the New York Knockout who, frankly, a cisgender woman who can use me as a water pig.
yeah,
I'm talking like she's like 6'3", 245, and like getting around her is like getting around a wall with feet.
yeah. No, I
The
I
body
play
types are
girls.
every, yeah, body. But I mean, I've had that moment, same as you. When I first, like, the first year I was really living out, and I was part of a theater troupe at a local college. We were putting together a performance of the Vagina Monologues,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm surrounded by college age women, and that's the first I needed 3 sessions with my therapist just to get over the cognitive dissonance of the fact that, oh my God, I'm tall,
yeah,
because I was the runt of the litter growing up.
yeah,
I was a
yeah.
little, I mean,
Yeah, so am I. Yeah, I
I
was
was
never
I will
tall.
say this: if I could have, oh God, if I could have puberty blockers at 13, 14,
Yeah,
it would, and that's one thing why the what you said earlier. There's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that. There is a lot of truth that, hey, no doubt, had our bodies developed different or allowed to develop different, things are going to end up different. No dispute.
yeah,
No
yeah,
dispute.
yeah.
I'm not going to dispute that, because
Yeah,
I
and
know in my own mind, I know how much different it could have been.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I know, like I turned out I turned out to have a form that kind of still works as a woman, but you know,
I don't know, with that killer hair, it works. Let's just be real. You got the big, hey, the thing you got the hair. I'll give you that.
the hair is working. Yeah,
I
the
had
hair
to
works for me.
I had to grow mine out. It took a little bit of time, but
Yeah,
it
no,
took a little bit. But the whole thing is that. But again, trans people need to be doing what we're doing right now.
yeah,
Especially transgender women need to be doing what we're doing right now, which is actually having conversations.
yeah,
I think there are two things that I really believe that trans women need to do more of. Number one, have more conversations amongst ourselves without the cisgender lens on all sorts of issues that any other woman would talk about, but it's going to hit different for us because it does hit different for us.
for sure.
See, there's the thing. I don't believe, for example, I'm exactly the same as a cis woman, and I'm okay with that. But I believe the cis women are women and trans women are women. But no two women
Are the
in the
same.
world have the same
No, and
exact
I make that
experience.
argument too when people say, "Well, you'll never know what a woman feels like," and I say, "You don't know what any other woman feels like either. Like you don't know what it
Yeah.
was like to be that woman
Well,
who grew up in. You don't know what that woman who grew up in Guatemala, and you don't know what it was like to have that woman who grew up with only
you don't.
one parent, and you
At
don't
the
know what
same
it's like to."
time, you don't know what you will have no idea what it's like to go to bed every night dreaming you're a girl from age 9 till the day you got your first estrogen shot either.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's this, the bigger thing is we're human beings having human experiences out in the world.
yeah,
Let's respect that I don't have to be the same as you to respect that experience. For example, I understand that for example, I will never give childbirth, but I will defend your reproductive rights because I understand the bodily autonomy issue that's involved in it. That protects me
absolutely.
and you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
I
when you
mean,
actually like I think part of it because we get to have a lot of one-on-one conversations with people who might be a little bit skeptical, who see you and see that you're not a caricature, and that see that you're a fully formed human, that kind of get on, that are able to get on your side because you're able to have these one-on-one conversations as opposed to
yes.
screaming at each other on social media, and you're right in the sense, like you said, that we all had our struggles. And no woman, no, we can all empathize with other women's struggles, even if we haven't lived that life. So,
Exactly.
a woman can tell me, like you said, that maybe I don't know exactly what a period feels like, or I don't know what childbirth feels like, or I don't have to worry about, when I'm with a partner or if I have a one night whatever, that I'm going to walk out of there worrying about am I pregnant or not. I know that, and I know I'm different in that way, and I'm
But
not.
one thing we do have but one thing we do have definitely have in common is we may have to, when we go out for a night in the town, we do have to worry about, will somebody be violent against us? It may be
Yeah,
for different reasons,
maybe for different reasons,
but it's the
but
same
yeah,
deal. And
yeah,
I think that's something, but I think that's something, for example, that trans women need to be talking to each other about. We need it, but also there is a lot of value in trans women and cis women coming together to learn each other's stories, to learn where we're different, but also to learn where the common ground is and truly listen.
yeah.
I am where I am in my own life and my own development because there were cisgender women who were guiding me through the things that frankly, when I first came out, I didn't know.
Yeah, and
Because
yeah,
I didn't because all that knowledge all that knowledge was blocked from me for so long. Because and a lot of it was because I had to survive.
yeah, and
There's a lot of value. Yeah, there's a lot of value in trans women telling our cis counterparts that story,
yeah.
and getting and listening to each other about that story. Because so many of us have been through more similar things than we realize.
Oh, for sure. And like I'm very grateful for, like, like when I transitioned on the job in Los Angeles where I was doing my training, whereas like the story that's often told now when someone transitions at work is that they're a danger and they got to get out of the washroom and I don't want that person in with me. It's like, no, that wasn't my experience. Like I was on a ward where the women, this was at a VA hospital, like, tough people, in Los Angeles, who basically were like, "You're on our team now. Like, we're standing up for you. You're one of us." And they said that right from the get-go.
Hmm.
And they took pride in including me. They took pride in like showing me the ropes. And part of it was like I made sure that I was a good listener. But they really were excited about, oh, look, I've got, like, here's Laura, and we're going to teach her the things she don't know.
Hmm.
And that was fantastic. And I learned so much because they weren't trying to be like, oh, you can't come to the bathroom with us, and you're not one of us, and you'll never know what it's like to be us. They're like, you come on our team and you tell us your secrets. Um, um, and it was, like I said, and I'm grateful as all hell for that experience. And it's, you hear the
Yes.
stories now, and it just doesn't seem like that's the narrative, that gets out. It's a story of people
In
who want something to
in
be
part
feared.
because we've allowed bad faith actors selling certain agendas,
Yeah,
selling agendas such as patriarchy, selling agendas such as misogyny, selling the creeping fascism that we're seeing globally
yeah,
to get in the way of get in the way of humanity. And that's what we're really talking about here. And to some people, they'll say this is woo woo. No, it's not. This is the gut level.
yeah.
This is what it's going to take.
Oh, good people know who good people
Connection,
are.
yeah, connection is the only way we're going to fight. We're going to save our humanity. We have to start making connections. And is it easy? No, it's not. It's hard, and it's going to take a lot. I have a good friend of mine who's an activist in Connecticut. Her name's Kamora Harrington, and one thing she stresses a lot is cultural humility.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something I've had to learn a great deal of in my progression as an activist is learning cultural humility. I don't think I could have I don't think I could have the converse I know for a fact I probably couldn't have the conversation I'm having with you right now 5 years ago because I wasn't at the level of cultural humility and maturity to really have it. At that time, I was I was a quote unquote TRA,
Okay.
and I'll own that. And I'll own it. We have to, all of us, get to a point, no matter where we're at, to get to the point where we can be humble enough and strong enough to say, I don't know what I don't know. And
Yeah.
that's on all sides. when we can say that, then we can really have some conversations. I mean, we can get to the better derma of the whole sports issue if all sides just say, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. And like I think it's one thing for us to talk, like I said, we disagree on sort of approach and we disagree maybe on some of the facts, but we're talking. But what I think it would be what I know when we were first talking, you said as long as you don't have these kind of people on. And I was like, no, I'm not going to get those kind of people on. But there's at some level, and I'm not saying it specifically as Emma Hilton or John Pike or one of those people, but I would love to have someone on who really believes in their heart of heart the kind of things that Emma Hilton says, and have a human story, have a human conversation with them. Not about, and not really bring it down to, distribution curves, and not talk about whether, that Leah Thomas is ranked 552nd as a male and then was ranked 10th or whatever as a, I don't want to have those conversations. I want to talk about what it feels like.
Those conversations are really, the whole conversation about the rankings when it comes down to it, it's meaningless because you're comparing apples and oranges. But what you're saying is people need to hear stories. For example, understand what it meant for me on April 15th, 2023, that first game, for me to be surrounded by a group of cisgender women, and they all are hugging me because I'm about to take that field and I'm in tears. I'm in tears because I'm playing it. I felt like I was 10 years old again, and I'm looking up at the heavens at my late father and saying, Dad, we're in pads again. Can you believe this? And I get this second opportunity. And it wasn't about cis, trans, or anything else. This was just about a person getting a second bite of the apple 40 years later. Yeah. And these people supporting that and saying, football is one of the most gender affirming things I ever did. It wasn't about the game. It was about the fact that at that moment, it was being in the huddle and calling 36 lead sweep and having your quarterback look up at you and say, "Are you ready, baby girl?" That was the intrinsic payoff. That was the point. The point was, we see you. How you came to your womanhood is immaterial at this moment. We see you, sister. I'm giving you the ball. Run with it. Are you ready, baby girl? That's the thing. Those are the things.
All right. Well, were you ready, baby girl? That was an excellent way to end. Those are the stories that we need to tell about not the numbers, but like you said, what it feels like to be included, what it feels like to belong, and what it feels like to see that belonging reflected back in the people on your team.
I will say this because I mentioned somebody.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to use your show, give an open invitation. I want to have a sit down. There was a person when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Who now is a TERF, unfortunately, or not. I don't know TERF, but definitely is in the transphobe camp.
TERF. Okay.
No, but the point is, she said a lot of things transphobic, and it pains me because growing up, she was my hero. Martina Navratilova. Hey, Martina, call me. Let's talk. Seriously. As somebody who is a fan of yours, in part because it seems like everybody was hating on you for illogical reasons. I want to have the opportunity to actually sit down and talk and have these stories and talk about these stories and talk about these experiences and find common ground.
Yeah.
I would love that.
If Martina catches wind, if Martina is listening and she wants to drop by and have a human conversation, not about biologic advantages, but just what it feels like to be excluded and what it feels like to belong, I'd love to have her come and sit in a chair.
I would love that. I want to thank you two for having me, because I know you took a risk. I took a risk. But that's what it's going to take to get liberation. We all must take risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Karleigh, you're a great guest. I'm so glad we had a chance to talk. I feel a little badly that I didn't hit record right away and I missed about 15 minutes of our conversation. Got some great stuff at the end.
Hey, I'm pretty sure we got enough. Hey, you want me back here? I'll come back here.
Yeah.
And I'll even talk to and I'll talk to some people who may and I'd be more than willing to sit down and talk to people who may be diametrically opposed
Yeah.
to what you're hearing me say. I want to have those conversations because it's the only way we're going to move. It's the only way we're going to move forward.
I think we absolutely have to have those conversations. Karleigh, it's been great having you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.